I'm breaking up with my fiancée because she demanded I quit my job to make more money. Hello, Reddit. I never expected to post a story like this here, but honestly, I need an outside perspective. I've always considered myself a level-headed guy, but the last 6 months have completely turned my reality upside down. And yes, this will be long, so get comfortable and prepare yourself. There's plenty here. Romance, ambitions, family, and deception. When I met Sophia, I thought I'd found the perfect match. We crossed paths in a cafe in Chelsea, New York, where I'd been living for the past couple of years after moving from Manchester. Sophia was energetic, ambitious, witty, with an infectious laugh and eyes that instantly captivated. We started dating and everything seemed perfect, at least from my point of view. The first few months were like a Hollywood movie: walks in Central Park, late dinners in cozy American bistros, impromptu trips to Boston and Washington. I felt like I was on cloud nine. I worked as a web designer in a small but stable company, where my dollar salary allowed me to live comfortably in New York. We fantasized together about the future, talked about marriage, kids, and a cottage in the suburbs. But little by little, something started bothering me. Sophia's conversations increasingly revolved around money. At first, it sounded like innocent teasing. "Jake, imagine if we could afford vacations to Martha's Vineyard every summer." Or, "You could get a raise, right?" I didn't pay much attention to it then, but gradually the jokes turned into ultimatums. "Jake," she said one evening, lounging on the sofa with a glass of wine, "do you seriously think your income is enough to guarantee us a carefree future?" I thought it was sufficient," I replied, staring at her in shock. "We're living pretty decently." "No, Jake, you're living decently for yourself alone. That's not enough for me. You need to aim higher. We need money." "More, more, more," she said, moving closer, and there was a firmness in her tone that I hadn't noticed before. That was the first moment I felt uneasy. I started noticing that her passion for finances sometimes overshadowed her feelings for me. I tried to ignore it, attributing it to stress or my own paranoia. But a couple of weeks later, she laid her cards on the table. "Jake, I want you to quit your job, start your own business, that idea you mentioned. You know I want a better life and your current position won't provide that for us." I was stunned. Quit my job for an uncertain business that could bring nothing but stress and debt just to get rich? All for her vision of our life. I'm not sure that's wise," I said cautiously. "Why not?" she replied with annoyance. "You love me, right? Love means making sacrifices for the one you love. Are you willing to do that for me?" I felt irritation boiling inside me. Love? Yes, I loved her. But love doesn't mean blindly submitting to someone's every whim, especially when it stakes financial stability and future prospects. Sophia, love doesn't mean recklessly diving into adventures. I love you, but I have my own convictions," I said. Her eyes narrowed, her lips tightened, and I saw the Sophia I'd missed before. Ambitious, domineering, capable of manipulating emotions for gain. The following weeks turned into a chain of conflicts. Every discussion ended with her reproaches about my shortcomings, and I increasingly felt trapped. "You don't even want to give your all for me," she yelled one night. "I deserve more." "And what does more mean?" I asked. "Living in perpetual fear of bankruptcy for your fantasy. I want stability." And that's when everything crumbled. I realized our worldviews diverged. For me, happiness was in being together, mutual support, emotions, and stability. For her, it was money, status, and external facade. I tried to find a middle ground, suggested postponing the business launch for a year, saving up money, building a foundation. But her reaction was always the same. "No, Jake, I want it now. If you love me, you'll do it." I began to realize this wasn't just disagreements about finances. It was a battle for dominance, control, her concept of our life. And deep down, I knew giving in would mean losing myself. And then, after months of pressure, I made the decision that changed everything. I broke up with Sophia. "Jake, are you kidding?" she asked that evening when I said it straight. "You can't just dump me." Sophia," I replied calmly. "I love you, but I can't live in a relationship where I'm forced into someone else's greed and plans. I want to be with someone who respects me and my beliefs." Tears rolled down her face. She screamed, begged, tried to play on pity, but I stood firm. Inside, I felt a storm of emotions, bitterness, relief, pain, freedom. And here's where I need your verdict, Reddit. I know to some I'll seem like a weakling, and to others, a jerk who abandoned his love. But every time I think about the future, my career, my convictions and priorities, I conclude, sometimes love doesn't mean agreeing to everything. Sometimes love is the ability to say, stop, even if it destroys the connection. After breaking up with Sophia, New York felt like a foreign metropolis to me. Every corner reminded me of us. Walks, meals, laughter that I once thought was my melody. But now it was emptiness that oppressed more than any screams or arguments. The morning after the breakup, I met with friends, Liam and Carlos, whom I'd known since college. They immediately sensed something was wrong. "Jake, you look like a ghost," Liam said as we settled in a tiny cafe on Broadway. "What happened?" I exhaled. I hadn't planned to spill everything, but something inside demanded to pour out the accumulated pain. "We broke up," I said briefly. "Sophia." She demanded I quit my job for a business that might not earn a cent. I couldn't do it. "You did the right thing," Carlos encouraged. "But it's your life, and I understand how heavy it is." We sat in silence as streams of passers-by flashed by the window. I felt a mix of relief and void. I was free, but the price of freedom seemed excessive. The next day, I returned to work. My firm, a compact but innovative studio, became a real sanctuary for me. Here I could focus on web design, not Sophia's endless demands. But then the calls started, first short and sharp. "Jake, let's meet," came her voice on the phone. I ignored. "Jake, you need to reconsider. I love you," she texted, which I just skipped. And a week later, she showed up at my apartment. The New York air was filled with street food smells, but my home was silent until she broke it. "Jake, please," she said, frozen in the doorway. "I'm ready to talk. Let's start over." I felt a whirlwind inside. Anger, regret, pain, uncertainty. "Sophia," I said calmly, though my pulse was racing. "It's impossible. We're too different. You see the world through money and status. I want stability, respect, and real emotions." "But Jake," her eyes welled up, "I'm ready to change. I can." "Sophia, stop. I can't live feeling pressure, threats, emotional games every day. That's not love. That's manipulation." She flinched as if slapped. For a moment, her eyes flashed a mix of pain and fury. "You think you're right," she whispered through tears. "Think everything's on your terms." "No," I replied. "I think we're incompatible. I'm trying to protect myself." After that, she left, slamming the door so hard the echo rang through the apartment. I was alone. Memories swirled in my mind. Our trips, laughter, shared dreams. And suddenly it was clear I'd lost not just her. I'd lost a part of myself that I'd given away in those bonds. The following days were about recovery. I went back to work, saw friends more often, tried new hobbies. But every joy was shadowed by thoughts of how Sophia tried to reshape me, and I resisted. Then texts came from mutual friends who knew us as a couple. "Jake, you're too harsh," one wrote. "Maybe give her a chance." "She's just greedy and domineering," another said. "You did right." I read these messages and felt the storm still raging inside. It was hard to figure out who was ultimately right. Me, true to my convictions, or those for whom concessions for love are the norm. A month after the breakup, Sophia started publicly dissecting our relationship on social media. She posted about how I was too weak to be a reliable partner, that love requires sacrifices, and hinted at my inability to understand her ambitions. New York, which had been our city, turned into a maze of memories and social pressure. Every time I walked down Broadway, it felt like all eyes were on me, as if the city was judging me for staying true to myself. A month had passed since Sophia disappeared from my reality. New York, which had felt warm before, now seemed alien. Every corner, cafe, park, Broadway, reminded me of us, our arguments and dreams that never came true. But gradually, I gained inner strength. Work at the studio became a refuge again. Projects I worked on brought satisfaction, and colleagues encouraged and motivated me. I dove into creativity, web design, and brainstorms, trying not to look back. But the past wouldn't hide. One Monday, I got an alarming text from my friend Carlos. "Jake, Sophia showed up at your sister's. She's saying she wants you back and something about your job." I felt my blood freeze, pulse pounding, hands shaking. I knew this wasn't random, it was a test, an attempt at pressure. "We need to meet her," Carlos insisted, "just to put an end to it." I thought long but realized running from facts was no longer possible. The meeting was in a modest cafe on the edge of Chelsea. Sophia was already sitting, eyes shining, smile a mix of sincerity and challenge. "Jake," she started as I sat across from her, "I'm ready to talk. I realized my mistakes. I evolved." "Evolved?" I asked, hiding the tremor in my voice. "Do you still put money above relationships?" She sighed, looked down. "I was selfish. I wanted you to leave a stable job for dreams that now I see were illusions, but I still love you, Jake." I looked at her and felt contradictions. Anger, pain, but also warm echoes of how I once trusted her completely. "Sophia," I said slowly, "I understand you can change, but I've changed too. I've learned to respect myself, my limits, and my happiness. I can't hand over control of my life again." "You seriously want to end everything?" she said quietly, tears glistening on her cheeks. "I don't want to tear up the past," I replied. "I want to build tomorrow, but a tomorrow without manipulation and pressure." We sat in silence, listening to the street noise outside the window. Inside me, a storm raged, but outwardly, calm. I realized the key was not yielding to others' plans, even if it's someone you love. A couple of weeks passed. Sophia stopped texting and calling. I focused on myself, new projects, friends, personal interests. Every day was a mini triumph: freedom, self-respect, personal happiness. But the drama didn't fade completely. One day I got a text from Sophia's former coworker. "Jake, Sophia told friends you're a jerk. She's turning everyone against you." I breathed deeper. This was the final test. I could explode, react, get into a fight, but I chose otherwise. I deleted the text silently, continuing my path. In that moment, I realized true strength isn't in proving something to others, but in staying true to yourself. And so ended the saga of my breakup. New York became a home again, but now for me alone. The past stayed behind, leaving lessons and baggage. I preserved my honor, freedom, and inner peace. Sophia, I don't know how her life turned out. Maybe she evolved, maybe not. But now it's irrelevant. The main thing, I learned to respect myself and not let anyone dictate my decisions and happiness. Almost 2 months had passed since I finally broke up with Sophia. New York was slowly returning its familiar pulse. Morning lattes, bustling sidewalks, tiny bookstores in Chelsea where I drew ideas. Life seemed back on track, but inner stress still lingered. One Friday evening, I met friends in an old pub in the East Village. Laughter, chatter, and music slightly dispelled the heaviness in my soul. But soon Emma, my coworker and old acquaintance, joined us. "Jake, did you know?" she started with concern. "Sophia's actively badmouthing you on social media again." I exhaled, trying to keep a straight face. "What exactly?" I asked calmly. "She's posting stories about how you're a jerk and supposedly ruined her life. It's noticeable in our mutual circles." I rolled my eyes and reminded myself not to take the bait. No replies, no reactions. Inner strength grew as I realized my life is mine, and Sophia's opinions shouldn't affect it. The next morning, I headed to the studio and drowned in work. A new project demanded full dedication, and I almost erased yesterday's worry. In the evening, I texted Carlos. "You're in the loop. She's trying to reach your parents. I think they're shocked." I frowned, reaching my parents. Of course, their support could amplify her games, but I'd mastered distance. That evening, Carlos and I walked along the Hudson embankment. River wind, splashing waves, it all helped sort thoughts. I shared with Carlos my feelings, pain, disappointment, but also inner progress over the months. "You get it," Carlos said. "True value is your freedom and choice. No one has the right to force you to sacrifice yourself for their plans." I nodded, feeling I'd finally found balance. But the drama returned suddenly. A week later, I received a letter from Sophia's lawyer. It was formal, icy, emotionless. "Mr. Jake, your former partner believes your actions caused her emotional harm. She reserves the option for compensation for stress and disruption of future relationships." I felt my heart clench again. All these months I'd tried to stay above the fray, but now I had to think about protection. I consulted a lawyer who listened to my story. Jake, he said, it's emotionally tough, but legally you're protected. You have evidence of her pressure and games. You're in a strong position. This conversation breathed confidence. I realized self-defense isn't cruelty, it's a must. A couple more weeks passed, and a new project started at the studio, absorbing me completely. I began traveling across the states with the team, meeting clients, diving into design and promotion. Every day brought new challenges, tasks, and joy from the profession. One evening, as the sun sank over New York, I sat on my apartment balcony, gazing at the city lights. Memories of Sophia flooded in, but now without pain. I understood I'd chosen right. I preserved my honor, freedom, and personal boundaries. That's when I grasped the key lesson of the whole saga. Love shouldn't cost your freedom. When someone tries to dictate your path, true courage is saying stop, even if it destroys bonds that seemed fateful. Sophia, maybe she's looking for someone who will submit to her plans, but her universe no longer matters to me. I've built my own reality, my norms, my happiness. And no drama, no accusation will break it. New York became home again, truly for me alone. And this feeling of calm, autonomy, and inner strength became my greatest trophy. Almost 6 months had passed since I broke off the engagement with Sophia. New York was slowly becoming my sanctuary, not just physically, but emotionally. I advanced my career, met new people, traveled, but the sense of void sometimes returned, especially on dates that used to be ours, anniversaries, holidays, birthdays. One early morning, as the metropolis was still waking, I got an unexpected call. On the screen, Sophia, my pulse clenched. Jake, she started in a trembling voice, I need to talk. I ruined everything. I closed my eyes and breathed deeper. Emotions tore out, but I knew I wouldn't give in. Speak, I replied evenly. She began telling how her ambitions and desire for dominance destroyed not only our bonds, but her own happiness. She admitted her ultimatums to quit my job for profit were selfish and unfair. I'll understand if you never want to see me again, she whispered, but I needed to admit I was awful. Inside me, feelings mixed. Relief, anger, regret for the wasted years, but mainly pride for resisting the games. We agreed to meet in a neutral place, a tiny cafe on a quiet New York street. I sat at the table, watching the crowd, trying to guess the continuation. When Sophia entered, her eyes were full of shame and pain. She tried to smile, but it came out fake. I want to apologize, she said, looking down, and I want you to know I realized my mistakes. I listened silently. Her words seemed sincere, but I understood the past couldn't be rewritten. You can't restore what's destroyed by years of pressure, games, and expectations. Sophia, I said slowly, I appreciate your admission, but our paths have diverged, I can't go back, and honestly, I don't want to. Disappointment and pain flashed in her eyes, but soon she nodded, accepting. We said goodbye, and I felt a strange relief. It was like dropping a burden after a long march. A couple more weeks passed. I fully devoted myself to work and friends. New projects motivated, and every day brought a sense of progress. My boundaries, once erased under Sophia's pressure, now strengthened. I realized the value of relationships isn't in money or convenience, but in mutual respect, support, and freedom to be yourself. And one day, as the sun sank over New York, I stood on my apartment balcony gazing at the city lights. The river wind gently ruffled my hair, and the air was filled with the scent of freedom and the city. In that moment, I grasped the main thing. The dramatic twists of the past taught me to value autonomy, respect my desires, and most importantly, not let anyone control my fate. Yes, I lost Sophia, but I found myself. And that feeling outweighed any love, any pressure, and any regret.